Good evening and welcome to tonight's telecast of Just the News. I'm Faye D'Souza. Let's get straight to it. India has reported 2,09,000 new COVID cases and 4,157 deaths in the last 24 hours. I want to repeat that in the last 24 hours, more than 4,000 people in our country have died of COVID, taking the total tally to 3,11,338 people who have died of COVID so far. And this is numbers that we know of. There are serious concerns that these numbers are grossly underreported. In fact, in a story in the New York Times, estimates informed by more than a dozen experts of research range, according to the New York Times, from very bad to catastrophic. Quoting the New York Times on this story, it says, as far as the deaths in India is concerned, many COVID deaths occur at home, or especially in rural areas, and are omitted from the official count. A more likely scenario is of 16 lakh deaths that have taken place in the country. A worse estimate scenario pegs it at 42 lakh deaths so far. Before we move on to the story that everyone is talking about tonight, which is WhatsApp and its case with the government, I wanted to point out and make sure that while we talk about that story on WhatsApp, it's not distracting us from the fact that more than 4,000 people are dying every day in our country of COVID. And that should be our main concern. To our next story. WhatsApp has now moved to Delhi High Court, challenging the IT Rules 2021, which needs for them to make a provision to identify the first originator of the information. So basically, WhatsApp has taken the Indian government to court because the Indian government passed rules that are meant to be enforced starting today. According to these rules, social media platforms, or what are called intermediaries, have to find a way to give the government information on where a particular message originated from when the government sends an order or when the court sends an order. Now, according to the plea filed by WhatsApp before the Delhi High Court, it says if this is to be implemented, WhatsApp will have to break its end-to-end encryption infrastructure. Right now, WhatsApp has an infrastructure on which all of the messaging happens, which is end-to-end encrypted, where WhatsApp cannot read the message at all, even if it wants to. Now, WhatsApp says if they were to do this, it would violate the fundamental rights of privacy and the fundamental rights of speech and expression of the citizens of this country and its users and its own privacy guidelines. According to the Indian Express, WhatsApp spokesperson has said requiring message apps to trace chats is the equivalent of asking us to keep a fingerprint of every single message sent on WhatsApp. This would break the end-to-end encryption and fundamentally undermines people's right to privacy. WhatsApp in court has also argued that basically in its petition it says its platform is used for communication between doctors and patients, lawyers and clients, people who work together, family members. All of this is private communication, and WhatsApp does not want to access the nature of that communication. Now, May 25th was the last day for social media platforms and intermediaries to comply with these new rules. A new web page that WhatsApp created and made live today said that such an approach will have, and I quote, a chilling effect on what people say even in private settings, violating universally recognized principles of free expression and human rights. The post went on to clarify that WhatsApp's reviews and response to valid law enforcement requests, sharing limited categories of information that are available to us consistent with the applicable law and policy. The Indian government on Wednesday has said it respects the right to privacy and has no intention to violate it. It said such requirements are only in the case where a particular message is required for the prevention, investigation and punishment of serious offences such as sexually explicit content. It has also said that no fundamental right, including the right to privacy, is absolute and is subject to reasonable restrictions. And the requirements of the intermediary guidelines pertaining to first originator of information are an example of those reasonable restrictions. Now, to give you a quick background of this case, on the 25th of February this year, the Centre announced new rules for social media platforms, which includes WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of these. new rules for OTT and for news that functions online, like what you're accessing right now. Now, among these, significant social intermediaries were given 3 months of compliance. That window ended on the 25th of May. And as per the rules, if the government has not received a compliance report from these companies, they will forfeit their status as an intermediary. Now, in the latest information we've received, the government has written to social media platforms on whether they have complied to these digital rules and asked for their response ASAP, preferably today. The note from the Ministry of Electronics and IT has asked social media companies to give information on the status of their compliance and has stressed, please confirm and share your responses ASAP, preferably today itself. Moving on. According to the Health Ministry data, the states of Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh are wasting 1 out of every 3 vaccine doses that they have. Now, this comes in the middle of all of the reports that states are now halting their vaccination drive because of a shortage of vaccines. The national average of wastage of doses is 6.3%. The ministry has asked for the states to keep their wastage below 1%. According to the Health Ministry, Jharkhand is wasting 37.3% of its vaccine doses, which is effectively 1 out of 3, and Chhattisgarh is wasting 30.2% of vaccine doses. The Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren, meanwhile, has refuted the claims and said that Jharkhand's current vaccine wastage proportionality is only about 4.6%, but the data cannot be updated right now on the CoWIN platform because of glitches of that platform. According to PTI, Chief Minister of Delhi Arvind Kejriwal has said manufacturers of Sputnik 5 have agreed to supply that vaccine to Delhi, but the quantity of that vaccine is yet to be decided. Last week, Delhi and Punjab had said Pfizer and Moderna had refused to negotiate with state governments and said they would only speak to the Centre for Procurement of Vaccines. Before we move any further, I have to provide a trigger warning on the next story. Some of our viewers might find this information distressing and upsetting. The Prayagraj, or what used to be called Allahabad administration, has allegedly been stripping the saffron and yellow shrouds from the graves buried in the sand in the banks of the river Ganga. Now, this comes after both domestic and international media published visuals using drones to take sort of bird's eye visuals of the banks of the Ganga, where hundreds of graves were visible. And they were visible because these orange and saffron shrouds were in stark contrast to the very pale sand of the banks. The subdivisional magistrate, Saron Anil Kumar Chaturvedi, told The Hindu, "We are only cleaning dirty clothes and shrouds that people leave behind or abandon on the side of the ghats." On being asked what prompted such a drive, Mr. Chaturvedi said the place looked dirty and doesn't give a good look because it's receiving a lot of media attention. He said people have left a mess out there and now journalists are visiting the ghat. It doesn't look good. Now, this activity has received a lot of criticism on social media because the move is being seen as disturbing the graves, which is in some way violating the dignity of the dead. Also in Uttar Pradesh, around 20 villagers in Siddharthnagar district have been administered with 2 different vaccines in both of their doses. Officials have claimed that no one has faced any adverse health effects and the culprits will be punished. The incident took place at the primary healthcare centre in a largely rural district about 270 kilometers from the state capital of Lucknow. Villagers were injected with Covishield in the first week of April and then given Covaxin for their second dose on May 14th. According to NDTV, the Chief Medical Officer of Siddharthnagar, Sandeep Chaudhary, has said, and I quote, "This is definitely an oversight. There were no instructions by the government to administer a cocktail of vaccines. I have asked for an explanation from those guilty. We will take whatever action is possible. Our teams have spoken to everyone and have met all those who were mistakenly administered the second dose. They are all healthy and not facing any problems." End quote. The Ministry of Women and Child Development have said 577 children across the country have been orphaned by the second wave of COVID in 55 days alone when they lost both of their parents to the virus. The Union Minister of Women and Child Development, Ms. Smriti Irani, tweeted on Tuesday saying from the 1st of April 2021 until 2 p.m. today, state governments and union territories across the country have reported a total of 577 children whose parents have succumbed to COVID. On the 17th of May, the ministry had issued a public warning against messages being circulated on social media for the adoption of children. A senior official said these were concerns that they could lead to child trafficking. We've carried out investigations into a large number of these messages and found most of them by far to be fake. They have been handed over to state police departments and will continue investigation according to cyber cell rules. End quote. The Indian Medical Association in Uttarakhand has served a defamation notice of 1,000 crore rupees to Patanjali co-founder and yoga teacher Ramdev post his remarks on allopathy. The 6-page notice served on behalf of IMA Secretary Ajay Khanna describes the remarks made by Mr. Ramdev as damaging to the reputation and the image of allopathy and around 2,000 practitioners of it who are part of the association in the state. Terming the remarks as a criminal act under section 499 of the Indian Penal Code, the notice demands 1. A written apology from him within the next 15 days and saying a compensation of 1,000 crore rupees will be demanded from him at the rate of 50 lakh per member of the IMA if he fails to do so. Mr. Ramdev had first called allopathy a stupid science, but was later forced to withdraw his statement after a letter from the Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan. In other news away from COVID right now, Cyclone Yaas has made landfall in Odisha on Wednesday morning and crossed the northern Odisha coast between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. with an estimated speed of 130 to 140 kilometers. It has now, according to reports, weakened into a severe cyclonic storm. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has said at least 1 crore people in the state of West Bengal are affected by rough weather conditions, high tide arising out of the storm, and 3 lakh houses have suffered damage. The NDRF has said rescue operations are underway in Odisha and West Bengal, and teams are clearing large number of uprooted electric poles and trees to keep the roads open in these states. Farmers across the country observed a black day as their ongoing protest against the centre's 3 farm laws completed 6 months today. The protest started near the borders of Delhi back in November last year on the 26th. People hoisted black flags in their homes and their vehicles as a show of solidarity. Thousands of farmers have been camping at Delhi's borders protesting the farm laws, which they say are pro-corporate and anti-farmer. The Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has said the DMK will fulfill its election promise of passing a resolution in the Assembly urging the central government to withdraw these farm laws. M.K. Stalin has said it is worrying that the union government has not come forward to withdraw these laws respecting the just demands and sentiments made by farmers protesting till date, not attempting to resolve the issue by holding constructive discussion with them. End quote. Several politicians, including Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, have extended support to the citizens of Lakshadweep who are protesting new regulations introduced by Administrator Praful Khoda Patel, who used to be the Home Minister of the state of Gujarat back when the Prime Minister Narendra Modi was Chief Minister there. Rahul Gandhi tweeted, and I quote, "Lakshadweep is India's jewel in the ocean. Ignorant bigots in power are destroying it. I stand with the people of Lakshadweep." End quote. To give you a background on this, Praful Khoda Patel has been mired in controversy after he took over as administrator in December last year. He's passed a series of regulations that the local people are extremely unhappy with. 1, he's lifted the ban on alcohol. 2, he's banned beef selling, buying, slaughter. And apparently 99% of the population of the island of Lakshadweep are Muslim, and they say that this ban affects livelihoods and is not conducive with their lifestyle. Also, he has been demolishing fishermen sheds built on coastal areas, saying they violate the Coast Guard Act. He's also been slammed for approving the Prevention of Antisocial Activities regulation. This apparently empowers the government to mandatorily acquire private property for development whenever the government feels necessary, and gives police powers to detain anyone. The latest draft regulation for the creation of a Lakshadweep Development Authority is also being widely resented by people because they say it is being issued on the behest of real estate interests, because most of the people of Lakshadweep, which belong to tribal groups, have very small holdings of lands, and they are worried that the government will take over their land and hand it over to real estate. The Indian Institute of Technology at Kharagpur has postponed the joint entrance examination of the JEE Advanced for 2021. In its official notification, it has also said a revised date for the examination will be announced at an appropriate time. Around 2.5 lakhs candidates who clear the JEE main examination are eligible to apply to the JEE Advanced examination. 103-year-old freedom fighter and activist H.S. Doreswamy passed away in Bengaluru today. He had recovered from COVID but was hospitalized again when he suffered a heart attack. He actively participated in the freedom struggle, including the Quit India movement, and he's been an active member of community and a vocal defender of citizen rights his whole life. He joined the anti-CAA protests in February last year when he was 102 years old. Moving on now to news from the world of business. Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee has said the Indian government could be spending more to help its population of more than 1.4 billion weather the economic devastation that has been caused by COVID. Mr. Banerjee said, and I quote, "I'm not sure if the government is calling it right. Is it possible to spend an extra 2% of GDP on this right now? Probably. Many countries have borrowed 10 times that amount, so why not?" End quote. India has yet to announce any major support measures this year. According to reports, the government is still working on preparing a stimulus package. News coming in from across the world at this point. South Korea has announced that masks will no longer be mandatory outdoors for people who've been vaccinated with at least one dose of the COVID vaccine from July onwards. The South Korea Prime Minister has also said that all quarantine measures would be adjusted in October once more than 70% of its residents have received the first dose of their vaccination. Also, an update from sports. A major Japanese newspaper has called for the cancellation of the Tokyo Olympics, citing reasons of public safety due to COVID. In its editorial, the newspaper, Asahi Shimbun, has said, "We cannot think it's rational to host the Olympics in this city this summer. Distrust and backlash against reckless national government, Tokyo government and stakeholders in the Olympics are nothing but escalating. We demand that the Prime Minister calmly evaluate the circumstances and decide on the cancellation of the summer event." The newspaper is one of several media organizations that is an official partner of the Tokyo Games. And one piece of positive news before we leave you for today. The Pune Municipal Corporation has announced it will set up oxygen concentrator libraries to provide free oxygen concentrators to needy patients in their homes. Patients can get oxygen concentrators for a week, 15 to 30 days, based on the doctor's prescriptions and certain conditions. That brings us to the end of the news today. Thank you so much for watching. Check out our YouTube page where we have a lot of videos uploaded explaining what is going on various stories that are taking place in the country right now. Do subscribe to our YouTube page. It will help us. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.